Hey everyone, I'm Fredrik Thomander. Welcome to For the Record Palma. I'm in the Winehouse room at Palma Music Studios, which a few years ago didn't exist at all. Instead, it all started with this. People often ask me, why build a big studio these days? It's 2025, everyone makes hit records on laptops, collaborating online, or using AI to write half the music. So why bother digging holes into the ground and pouring your savings into bricks and cables? Here's why. There's something magical that happens when musicians meet in a space designed for music. A place where the acoustics are perfect, where you don't hear cars driving by, where you can play loud without scaring the neighbors, and where inspiration flows because you're not worrying about gear or room reflections. And that's why we wanted to build a world-class studio on a Spanish island in the middle of the Mediterranean. But why Palma de Mallorca? Well, I moved here in 2014 and I wasn't planning on building a studio, but artists I work with kept saying, Fredrik, let's do the sessions on Mallorca instead. And my friend Johan Lundgren, who became my partner in this crazy adventure, said it was insane that such a vibrant place as Palma didn't have a world-class studio. Meanwhile, his studio in London was sitting empty half the time, and then one day in February 2015, I drove past an empty plot in the middle of Palma, and I sent Johan a photo, half joking, could this be our world-class studio? And to my surprise, he said, yeah, it's a great idea. We started thinking, what if we could build a city studio, one that was right in the middle of the action, close to Palma's restaurants, bars and the ocean, but private enough to create music without distractions. Son Espanyolet was perfect, just next to Santa Catalina, where some of the island's best restaurants are, and only minutes from the sea. The plot was basically an old ruin filled with junk, but the location couldn't be better. So we decided to go for it, and that's how this crazy idea officially started. Before this place looked like this, it started with scraps of paper, phone calls, and a lot of coffee. I started sketching ideas, thinking of every studio I'd worked in before. What worked, what didn't. We wanted a place where multiple people can work at the same time, but still have privacy. Songwriting camp on one floor, a rock band tracking drums on another, and a film crew mixing a movie upstairs. And when the day was done, everyone could meet up here on the rooftop terrace for a drink and then hit the Palma nightlife. But drawing a studio isn't just about rooms and walls. It's about sound. Enter Nick Whitaker. Nick is one of the world's top acoustic engineers. He's designed studios for Abbey Road, Air Studios, Coldplay, Pink Floyd, and even Lenny Kravitz. Nick flew in from the UK, and together with our local architect Gabriel, we started designing something truly special. But there was a problem. We had a limited surface area above ground, only 2 floors allowed, but the soil underneath was great. So we thought, what if we dig down instead? Well, we did. You see, Palma City's zoning rules only allowed us 2 floors above ground, but the soil under the lot was perfect for digging. So instead of going up, we decided to go deep. And that's how we ended up excavating a massive underground space for studios, machine rooms, and the ultimate quiet mix room. This first basement wall was poured, and we were feeling pretty good until the guys digging hit an ancient rainwater tank. Suddenly, I'm thinking, echo chamber. I imagined building a secret reverb chamber under Palma, just like Capitol Studios in LA. But practicalities won. We filled it in and kept digging. Next challenge? Grounding. See, good audio needs perfect electrical grounding, or you'll hear hums, buzzes, and radio stations in your guitar amps. So we buried 3 iron rods 90 centimeter deep under the foundation, and then wrapped copper wire all the way around the building. Once we finished digging that giant hole and our concrete foundation walls were dry, it was time for steel beams and bricks. We put steel beams across the basement to support the ground floor. Then, brick by brick, Palma Music Studios started to appear. But these weren't just any bricks. Each brick was filled with concrete to add weight and isolation. Because remember, we're building a place where you can record the loudest rock band in Palma, or the quietest vocal and never hear the neighbors on the street. See these walls? There's actually a 5 centimeter gap between the inner and the outer walls. That gap stops vibration from traveling into the building or out to the street, which is great because we plan to make some noise in here. One of my favorite moments was standing in the future amp booth, looking up at our giant 8-meter ceiling and imagining this whole place finished. We wanted height, space, air, so the room wouldn't feel cramped, even when recording a drum kit, a choir, or a full band. Speaking of which, upstairs is our lounge and surround studio. Downstairs, our big mix room and reception. And eventually, a rooftop terrace for after-hour session drinks. But before all the cool stuff, there was a lot of hard work. Masonry, concrete, dust, steel, acoustic isolation. Every detail matters in the studio build, because the goal is simple: to control the sound. One of the first things that Nick told us was that every great studio has its own sound. It's not just walls keeping the noise out. The way those walls reflect, absorb, or diffuse sound actually shapes how your recordings will feel. So Nick designed our studios to be floating boxes inside boxes. Here's how it works. First, we pour a separate concrete slab for each room. That slab floats on jack-up devices made by a company called Mason Industries. Then walls and ceilings are built on that floating slab. It's like an island. No vibrations travel from one room to the other or into the street. Nick even designed every air duct with silencers, so no noise leaks through the ventilation. But acoustics aren't just about isolation, they're about making the room sound good. Like this wall behind me. These wooden panels scatter high frequencies to avoid echo. Inside there's fabric-covered insulation to absorb sound. Some panels act like little drums catching certain frequencies. Others have holes to let bass disappear into insulation behind. We were inspired by the look of East West Studios in Los Angeles. It's technical, but it's also beautiful. We wanted rooms that sound amazing and feel inspiring. If there's one thing I've learned building a studio, it's that details are everything. First, materials. We wanted Palma Music Studios to feel like Mallorca, so we used local Bini Salem stone for all the stairs and floors. Next, stone walls. This wall in the live room looks like an ancient city wall. We built it to feel like we'd excavated an old Marroquin arch. Our logo goes right in the middle, backlit in black steel, same vibe in the reception. We blended stone and wood to bring warmth and texture. We couldn't hide cables inside some of these walls because the acoustic insulation. So instead, we made the electrical pipes part of the design. Rusty vintage style tubes and sockets. It looks amazing against the stone. Even the studio furniture were custom built in the UK by Paul Longman, down to the millimeter. All the studio desks hide cables, hold screens, and keep everything clean. And let's talk about cables. So many cables. We ran kilometers of audio, Ethernet, and power lines through this place. Every room has tie lines. Even the rooftop terrace is wired for recording under the Palma sky. All rooms also have separate circuits for European and American power. The devil is in the details. After months of digging, pouring concrete, building walls, floating floors, running cables, and obsessing over every detail, it was time for the moment I'd been waiting for, making music in this place for the first time. We were still a building site, dust everywhere, workers carrying bricks past us, but one day a living legend dropped by. This guy, Per Lindvall. One of the greatest drummers in the world. He played with ABBA, Aha, and basically half of Sweden's music scene. Per happened to be on the island, so I asked him, hey, want to be the first musician ever to play at Palma Music Studios? He said, sure. So there we were, surrounded by unfinished walls, and Per sat down and started playing.
With Mr. Per Lindvall on drums and percussion.
And from that moment on, it felt real. The studio wasn't just a blueprint or a hole in the ground anymore. It had a heartbeat. After that, we started getting ready for the real test, installing gear and checking the acoustics. One by one, shipments arrived, console, speakers, cables, furniture, and then Nick Whittaker came back to tune every single room. We blasted pink noise through the speakers. Nick measured reflections, reverb times, and frequency curves. And guess what? They all sounded great. And that's how good Nick's designs were. So, after years of dreaming, planning, and building, this place sounded better than we ever hoped. 22 months, that's how long it took from the first idea to our grand opening. And when we finally opened these doors, the place came alive. Artists and producers started pouring in, people from all over the world, writing, recording, producing, mixing, creating magic. We've done songwriting camps, post-production for films, voiceover for TV, albums for rock bands, house music, DJs, all happening under one roof, here in Palma de Mallorca. One of my favorite moments was just listening, sitting quietly, hearing music coming out of each studio for the first time, knowing it sounded exactly how we hoped it would. This building isn't just concrete and cables anymore. It's a place where people connect, where creativity flows, where songs are born. And at the end of the day, that's why we built Palma Music Studios. I want to thank every single person who helped make this happen. builders, architects, designers, engineers, artists, friends, and thanks to you for watching. I hope it gave you a glimpse behind the scenes of building a world-class studio from scratch. If you're ever in Palma, come in and say hi or follow us online to see what we're up to. See you next time.